And hello everyone, welcome back to another CSS tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be taking a look at the position property. Now, position property allows you to specify the type of positioning you want to apply to a specific element, such as static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. You can then use these positionings to position an element from the top, the right, the left, and the bottom. Let's start with static. Static positioned elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties in your CSS. So to give an example of this, let's say we have a bunch of lorem. Just a p tag, lorem, and let's say times 10. How much space does that take? Okay, that's good enough. And then here we have a p tag with the class or with the ID of test, and this just says I am sticky. And we put another p tag here of lorem of times 10. There we go. Okay, so here we have the I am sticky, and there we go. And we might want to add some more lorem here. Lorem times 2. There we go. Nice, and a lot of lorem. Okay. Then here we select the element that has the ID of test. Go here, hashtag test. And we just say position sticky. Now take a look what happens when we scroll. Not sticky, I meant to say static. My bad. There we go. Nothing really happens, it just stays kind of where it is. By default, things will be positioned as static. If we were to say right, and we were to say 200 pixels, nothing will happen. If we were to say top, 200 pixels, nothing will happen. So static is what everything is by default here. Just static content on the page. It doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. Then we have relative. An element of the position of relative is positioned relative to its usual position where it would be. For example, if we were to make this relative, then let's just make it less than 200. Let's just make it 20 pixels, and I'm just gonna make this left so it's easier. There we go. So now it's 20 pixels down and 20 pixels from the top, or from left and from the top, from where it usually was. So if we were to remove this is where it was originally. We then moved it relative from where it was to a new position. So that's what relative does. Then we have fixed, and fixed is a fixed position on this part of the page, the part that you can see. So if we just go here and say background color red, there we go. Then this will always be there, no matter where I scroll, no matter where I am. This is fixed, so it will be here forever. It is similar, but not the same as absolute. So if we say absolute, 20 pixels, you will not see a difference. But the difference is, when I scroll down, it doesn't scroll with me. Absolute is from here on the page, depending on exactly what you do. There are states or times when this is not the case. But absolute starts from here on the page, and 20 pixels, and it doesn't move. It's absolute positioned. Fixed will always be in the view of the user. That is what fixed is. So fixed is always fixed to where the user is looking. Now you need to take note, if we go back here to absolute, since we scroll down like this, we don't like that really. What we could do to make sure that this is maybe, because you don't want to position something like this. You don't want to do that just to get it where you want it to be. That is usually not the way to go. Generally, you should stay away from absolute positioning as much as possible, because a lot of beginners specifically make the mistake of positioning everything absolute, and then when there comes a time or point where they need to add another button or add something to the styling, it breaks everything. And when the screen size changes, everything breaks again. Absolute, you should almost always stay away from it unless you know what you're doing. Now to make an absolute positioning, not start positioning from the top here, because the page might change depending on where you are. What we could do is we could wrap this p tag And I'm just going to call this, let's use a class for once, rel, just for relative. We move this here. Then what we do is we select this rel. And here I'm just again going to do 20 pixels so it doesn't go too far off. And we go hashtag rel, position relative. And this should be a dot, not a hashtag. This is a class. And now you'll notice, even though it's only 20 pixels, it's here. The reason for that is when you position something absolute in a relative positioned element. So if its parent element is positioned relative, then your absolute will be positioned absolute relative to this position. So it will start from here. Not from here, but from here, where this rel is relatively positioned, because it is covering this element that is absolute. But this is specifically with relative. If we say static, it's not going to work. If we say fixed, it's not going to work. It's specifically relative, in which case you can allow absolute a little bit of extra creativity without needing to use this specific point on the page. And then finally, we have sticky. Position sticky. Now the thing with sticky is, it is almost a middle ground between relative and fixed. It almost switches between them for you. And let's just position maybe the top here to 0. And let's maybe move this ID and change it to rel here instead. .rel. There we go. And instead of using a p tag, we're going to use a div here. And now you'll notice it swaps between relative and fixed. So if we were to make this 20 pixels, then now it will stay 20 pixels from the top. But once we scroll above it, it's going to stay there. Once we go below it, or should be going below it, it will stay where it is. That's the nice part of sticky. Take note, it doesn't really work with p tags, so you need to use a div here. And those are the different types of positioning you can get. And of course, you don't need to use top left. You can go bottom as an example. So bottom 20 pixels. So now it's a little bit more weird, but now if you scroll up, it will always be at the bottom until we go there, and then it's normal. And that is the different type of positioning you can get in CSS. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next CSS tutorial.